Okay, like I said, I'm going to start from the beginning with what I did in the last class. Backend intro 3. Okay, VS Code. And if you are joining us late, sometimes you will miss some things. So sometimes I deliberately start late by 10 minutes past to give time. You can't see my screen. Are you serious? Okay, I'll stop sharing and share again. Can you see it now? I hope you can. All right. So the first thing you want to do is to initialize npm and make sure you've downloaded Node. Otherwise, you cannot use npm. So I will use this internal this thing. There's no need for a second one. Or should I create a second one? You know what? Let me use a second one. I will use a second terminal so that it will be easier. So this is cohort 2, and here open this terminal. Yeah. So I'll close this one. And this, make it bigger. All right. Now the first thing you want to do is to initialize npm init, and I will use the flag y. If you want to add yes, that's okay. Y, and hit enter. So it has created a package.json file, and I told you this file contains all the information about this backend project. If for any reason you delete the package.json, you will start that project from the beginning again. All right, so and my main file is called index.js. So I will need to create index.js. So that's it. I have that. The next thing I want to do is to set up the server. The server is the first thing to set up after you've initialized npm. You set up the server. So to set up the server, I'll be using Express. That is not as if you can't do it manually. You can, but why do that when you can actually move on to other things? I will use Express, and to use Express, you need to install Express, and I'll do that with npm i express. So npm i express means npm install Express, and like I said, you can't use npm if you've not installed Node. So make sure you've installed Node. Then I'll hit enter. Now I have Express being installed, and it has finished installing because I see found zero vulnerabilities. Now I have Node modules and I have a package lock. So inside my index file, now in my package.json, I see Express as a dependency. So what I can now do is to set up the server. To set up the server, I'll do const express is equal to require express. The express I installed. So I'm bringing in Express and I'm putting it inside this variable. The second thing I want to do is to create the variable app for my app, and then say this will run on the Express function. So I am invoking the Express function here. And like I said, packages are just a block of codes that have been put together and deployed as a module. You can bring it in and then use it. You can write the whole function yourself. If you have the time, go ahead and write the whole function yourself and call it. It will still do the same thing. So here, the next thing I want to do is to tell the app to start listening to requests. Now it will start listening to requests, but I need to open a port. I need to open a port. And I told you before, most times you need to store your variables in a secret place called the process environment. So I will say my port will be coming from the process environment dot port. If you don't see it, then fall back to something like 8,000. So my port will be coming from this secret environment, but if you don't see it, then fall back to 8,000. Here I will say be listening to requests on this port. But after then, when you started, I want you to run a function. So it will listen to requests at a particular port, either the port that is coming from our process environment or 8,000. Now, when it has started listening, I want it to run a function, which is this arrow function. What this arrow function will do will be to console log for me. Let me use string concatenation. Will console log for me server started running on. I want to get the port variable and know which port it is running on. So if I save this, I've succeeded in setting up the server. What I can do now is to check if this thing is actually running. So I will say node run. This one everywhere is quiet. If you can hear me, please drop a thumbs up. If you can hear me, please drop a thumbs up. Everywhere is so quiet. All right. That's Cosrep. Any other person? Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. So with this now, I've succeeded in setting up my server. Now, this is exactly how you set up the server, even for big projects. Whether they are paying you 1 million, but in most cases, except if you are not the only backend developer, there's every possibility that somebody have already set up the server and is already running. So you are not coming to set up servers again. And servers are only set up once. Once you set it up once, the next thing is start building your API, because that is the major job of a backend developer. The APIs that you build are the ones that are responsible for handling all the functionalities on that software. So if you see a software that's working fine, it means that it has a lot of APIs put together and they are all working. So that is the job of a backend. Now, in most cases, you may not be the one to set up the server. You just come and start adding to the list of APIs they have. But in most cases, if you are the one that is starting from the beginning, you will need to set up a server before you start running your APIs. Yes, I think I am recording, because if I'm not recording, a lot will go wrong. So I'm recording it now. Fine. Let me see that this is actually running. I will say node run index.js. Hit enter and it says server is running on port 8,000. Now this is the first step. Actually, this is the second step. The first step is to initialize npm to create package.json file. The second step is to create your server. That's the second step, to create the server. So when you set up the server, the next thing is to set up your script. Now, because the script, sometimes you may forget it. So you need to set up your script. Now, if somebody else has set up the server, they will give you the code base. They will give you access to the GitHub account. So you're just getting the code base, which is going to be something like this too. You're getting the code base. In the code there, you will see the code that is running the server. So that's it. When you are deploying the current code plus your own addition. That's how it goes. So we have our server running and we've tested it. We see that it's running here. The next thing is to set up our script. And I told you the last time that to set up script, you need two scripts. One of them is compulsory. That one is the start script. Then the second script, if you want, you can create a second script. Call it whatever you like, but we like calling it dev. So the dev is not compulsory, but the start script is compulsory. Now, it is very, very compulsory to have a start script, especially if you are going to be deploying to AWS, DigitalOcean, and what's the other one? Amazon Azure. Now, the start script is very, very important. But there are some servers you deploy to, some cloud storage you deploy to. You may not need the start script. You might run it another way, but that's long processes. So the start script is very, very important because you will not be there to start the server. You will not be there. Now, the test script is fine, it's okay, but here we don't have a test script. Now, test script is simply you put a script that whenever you run it, it will test a particular part of your code. Maybe it will test all the code, but it will test a particular part. Now, as you go on as developers, you start hearing a lot of people saying test, test. Now, it's not enough to write codes. When you write the code and it's working, you also need to write test codes again. So that's like another code that will test the different codes you've written. So what I mean is, for example, you may write an API code that will allow users to log in. Then you will write another code that is going to test that login API. So that is a test script. So, but you can put it if you want, but you can also skip it if you don't want. Now, the only thing is you are the one building the backend. You are going to test it yourself. But sometimes some companies will ask you to write a code that will test it like that. Some people will hire QA, quality assurance and quality control, whatever, and the person there will be stressing you to write code that will do it. So if nobody's forcing you to write code, fine, you keep it. Nobody have ever asked me to write code, but I've seen a lot of my friends, they worry them to write test code. So all right, so to do that, I will need to install, I'll cancel this with Control-C. I'll need to install NodeMon. Now, I explained to you before what NodeMon does. Now, NodeMon is going to restart our server. Oh my. Yes, we're almost done. Once I'm done, we'll move to Git. We're almost done for this. We'll move to Git immediately. All right, so NodeMon will help us to restart the server every single time. So NodeMon will help us restart the server every time we make changes. And I am installing NodeMon as a dev dependency. That is why you see this D here as a dev dependency. This D here means dev dependency. So I will go ahead and run this. It is installing. And I didn't see anything. And that is because now see one error you are definitely going to be having. If you make changes here to this package.json file and you don't save it, the reason why I know that this is not saved because I'm seeing circle here. Unlike this one, there's no circle here. Where I'm seeing circle here, it means it's not saved. Now, because it's not saved, the package.json file doesn't know what is going on. It doesn't know that I have installed NodeMon. And that is why you're not seeing NodeMon here. So whenever you're making changes to package.json file, you need to be very careful because right now it's asking me to compare the old JSON file I have and the new one. What do I want to do? So if I click on compare, you'll see that before I had this, and then later I then installed dev dependency. So it's asking me, my guy, which one are you doing? Are you sure you know what you're doing? Your package.json file are not relating very well. What's going on? So what I can do is say maybe accept it or revert the changes. So I will go ahead and accept, but that means I've lost the NodeMon that I installed. I'll need to install it again. So that is how important, or how will I say, how powerful, or not powerful, like how important the package.json file is. If it misses anything, that part of the project is lost. For example, you know that here I'm using Express version 4.19.2. If for any reason I change this thing to 5 or 7, then there's going to be a problem. So be careful how to work on these numbers, because they are very, very important. The version of the Express you are using depends on, they should work with the version of other dependencies you are using. Sometimes versions do not work together. You can have a latest version of Express, and then you are using another dependency that the version is older, and the two of them cannot work together. It happens a lot, and that is why most projects you see that have already been running are going through issues, because these dependencies are updated regularly. Now, if you're using the outdated version, things can go wrong with your software. So, which is why it's good to stay up to date. And they don't joke with backend developers, because the moment you remove the backend developer, unlike the front end where you build the project and hand over, the backend, you don't just build and hand over. You need to be there with the project every day and night, because you can't tell when users are using the project. Some persons wake up in the middle of the night. That is when they want to decide to use your software. Some people will use it very early in the morning, and they can encounter issues at any point. And most times it's not because of your software. No, it's not. The internet they are using can be responsible. The weather condition can be responsible. A lot of things can be responsible, but they will not see it that way. They will say it's the developer, it's the software. So they just put it on you. But you know that it's not always the software. It can be the user's fault. It can be network's fault. It can be the weather condition. It can be so many things that will maybe change how the software will work. So now I've installed NodeMon. I will say the start script, I want to use Node to run index.js. And for the dev script, I want to use NodeMon to run index.js. So if I save this now and come here, and I'll say npm run start. So that means Node will be running start. And then you have server running on port 8000. I can cancel it with Ctrl+C and say npm run dev. Then NodeMon will start running the server, and that is why you see server running on port 8000. So whenever you need to cancel the server, otherwise that server will keep running on your PC. So when you're done with your development, you close or cancel the server with Ctrl+C. So ladies and gentlemen, we succeeded in setting up the server, setting up the script. And the next thing you need to move on to is start building your APIs. So do you have any question at this point? Any question? Okay, no question. So like I said, your job as a backend developer is building APIs. Once you hear backend, it's all about building APIs. And there are two kinds of API, not just two, maybe three or maybe four. But the most important API you should learn how to do is building authentication. Then when you know how to do authentication, you've gone far, or let's say half, as a backend developer. The next thing is learn how to perform CRUD operations. So when I say CRUD operations simply means the C is for create. So create is like perform a post request, create data on the database. That's a create. The read is like a get request, read data from the database. The U is the update, the put or the patch request. And then the D is the delete request. So the moment you can do CRUD and authentication, you are far by your journey. The next thing you want to talk about is how to build chat system, users chatting with themselves, or maybe any other complicated stuffs, maybe linking up with a crypto wallet or any wallet, any other thing you want to do. But this is the most important thing you need to know as a backend developer: authentication and the CRUD. Now, the two of them are almost the same thing. Authentication is actually CRUD, but authentication is a step above CRUD. So the basics is CRUD. Then a step further, higher, is authentication. Because for every software you build, users will need to create account, users will need to create password, users will need to log in, users will also forget their password, and they will need to recover their password. Users might decide to close their account, and so on and so forth. So that is why they are very, very important. But we're not going to do all of them at the same time. We'll take them one after another. The first one, let's perform a read. So I'll say app.get. Now, app.get is simply saying if there is a GET request on this app. And like I said, a GET request is the R, the read. In our next class, we're going to link this to a database and start making requests directly to the database. But for now, let's understand how to set it up before we integrate a database to it. So we are trying to read data. That is what a GET request is. So if there's a GET request on this endpoint called user, maybe user or users, anyone. So this /, this thing inside quote here, is the endpoint. So whatever URL you send to the front-end developer, that URL, they will be attaching these endpoints to that URL. /users, /login, /attendance, anything, registration, and so on and so forth. So what you are saying is, if there is a GET request on our backend app on this particular endpoint, we want to run a function. The function will handle that request. So the function is what will do what that user is asking you to do. So for example, if you are building a login, you are going to put an endpoint like /login or /sign up. So if a user is trying to reach or hit that endpoint, you have a function that will do what that user is asking for. We're going to do that with time, but let's understand what these are. So if there's a GET request on this endpoint, we want to run a function, this function. So what would the function do? Accept the request and then accept the response. For every request, there is going to be a request and a response. For every request, whether the request is good or bad, whether it's half or full, it is going to come with a request object and a response object. So as they are sending you that response object, now the response object is like an object, and of course a JavaScript object that contains all the information about that request. So when they are sending you a request, it's an object that contains everything about that request. The head of the request, the URL of the request, the endpoint of the request, the IP address of the user, all the information about that request. There are so many informations in that object. Now, we are going to treat some of these informations on that object with time. But you need to know that for every request, there's going to be a request object and there's going to be a response object. The response object is not usually plenty when it is coming that first time, because they are sending you an object that you are going to attach information to it and send it back. So that is what the response object is. It is going to come with some information, but not plenty as the request. So when it comes, you are going to take that response object, add information to it, and send it back. So when the user or maybe the front-end developer that has made that request, he will be expecting that response object to come back to them. And that response object that is coming back to them will contain some data that you have attached to it and sent back. So that is why we say run a function that will accept the request object and accept the response object. The request object has been packaged by the front-end developer and sent to you. You can accept it and take information from it that have been passed there. The parameters, the body, the head, the authorization, the token, so many things that have been attached there. You take it from the request and do whatever you want to do. And when you are sending back, you take that same, they will send you a request object. You take the request object, attach whatever you want to attach to it, and send it back. So that is what happens. So right here, we take the request and response. We're not doing much. We just attach a JSON. .json. We just attach a JSON with anything. So we're attaching a JSON of anything. It can be of strings. Of course, I've told you before, you can be attaching a string to it and sending it back. So if I go to my browser, sorry. I'm waiting for my browser to come up. Yeah, it's here. So if I go to my browser now, first things first, I need to type in the domain. The domain I'm using, or the URL, is localhost because this is running locally, localhost. And the port is not 3000, the port is the port is 8000. If I hit enter, it is trying to get, or it is trying to make a request to /. That is why it's saying here cannot get /. / is like the base endpoint, the first endpoint. Most times, what we do with this / endpoint, let me show you. What we do with this / endpoint is simple. We do something like this. I think I can come here and I'll say app.get. If there is a request on the base URL, we want to run a function. And the function is going to accept the request and also accept the response object. And what this is going to do is simple. It is going to return a response .json, and it will just be a message that says welcome to Access Bank server. So this is what we do with a base endpoint, something like this. So the first time the user is, the front-end developer is trying to test your server to see whether they are actually communicating with your server, they are going to use this base endpoint. Just put the base URL like that. If it says welcome, then it means you are actually hitting the server. If it doesn't say welcome, it means you have not reached the server. You are not communicating with the server yet. Now, but we're going to explain that. I'm going to explain that further. So that is what we do with this endpoint. We set this like a test, because every developer will first want to test whether they actually, what they've set up is actually communicating with your backend. So you put something like this and put a message that says, welcome to our server. So if they see that message, they then know that the URL is correct and they're actually communicating with your backend. But what we want to do is send this data. Of course, we're actually sending the same thing. The two of them are strings. So, but let's try it again. We do to / users and hit enter, and we have this. But for the users, we want to send an object, maybe something different, like an object. Say const. What do I put in? Const users is equal to an array of objects. So this object is going to have first name, and that will be like David, comma, and then last name. Sorry, I don't want to put last name. That will be like something. And maybe I want to duplicate these 3 more places to have more users. So now I have an object or an array of objects. So what I want to do is, if they make a request to get all the users, I want to send back the users array. And that's it. So if I hit this request, it's going to, for this endpoint, it's going to accept the request object, accept the response object, and then take that response object, attach a JSON to it, and the JSON is attaching is the user array to it and sending it back. So if I run this now I have a response coming back with an array. So this is like a typical backend and what you are going to be doing as a backend developer. Do you have any question? Any question? Any question? Go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead and ask your question. Okay, so this is what I will do now. I'm going to put a simple, how did I get the link to the web page? I didn't do link to the web page. Now, what I did is to use localhost column port 8000. Now, because our server is running on port 8000, and localhost is the URL that points back to our computer. So when I put this URL localhost that is pointing back to our computer, the request is going to go out and then come back to our computer. Now, if it comes back to our computer, it's going to check which port we added there. We added 8000, and then it's going to check the server or communicate with the server that is running on port 8000. Now, if I change this port 8000 to like 7000, it will show error. The reason why it's showing error is because the server is running on my system, but it's not running on port 7000. So the two of them will not communicate. If I put something like port 5000, it will still show error because the server is running on port 8000 and you are calling port 5000. So it will not work. But if I go back to my server or maybe to my code and change this to 5000 and save, and then come here, refresh this, you see that now it is running. So localhost is a domain that will point back to your computer. But when it's coming back to your computer, it is coming back to the port that you attach to that localhost. So if there is a server running on that port, then it will communicate with that server. But if there is no server running on that port, it will show error. So ladies and gentlemen, I think that's pretty much everything we did yesterday. So this is where I am going to stop for today's class. And no, not today's class. Stop for backend and then move to Git and GitHub. Do you have any question on how to set up your server, set up your script, and perform or handle a first GET request? Any question? Are you sure? Because if you say no, it means you understand everything. Okay, if you understand everything I just did now, drop a thumbs up. If you don't understand everything I did now, drop a thumbs down. If you understood it, drop a thumbs up. If you didn't, drop a thumbs down. If you did it, how did they say it? If you did it, say you did it. If you didn't did it, say you didn't did it. All right. Okay, that's great. Now let's assume we have a project, our backend project, and I want to push it to Git. Stanley, it is the folder you created. Go to the folder you created, where you created that folder. Right click on the folder and click on Git bash here. Now, I believe you're using Windows. If you are using NodeMon, then you can use run dev. But if you're not using NodeMon, then stick to start because you have Node installed. But if you installed NodeMon, then you can use run dev. Now, like wisdom, I was saying, Stanley, I was saying to to run this thing, you need to right click on the folder you created. Yes, Joshua, where is Joshua? Where is Joshua? Joshua, are you on this call? Joshua, are you on this call? Okay. Go ahead, Joshua, use the mic. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Can you hear me,
you
sir?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Actually, I've been wondering, like, how do we use this in real life applications, like the servers and getting those datas? How do we actually use it in real life application?
Wisdom. I'm sorry, you're not wisdom. Joshua, this one I'm building, is it not real life? This is real life now. It's exactly what I do here. See, let me
mean is
explain.
that
Let me explain. Okay, which software? Mention one software you know. Just mention one software. Hello, Joshua, can you hear me?
OP.
OP. Now, can you mention
Yes, sir. OP.
three things that OP does? Just three things, three functionalities OP has.
Number one is creating an account.
Creating an account, one. The next one is what?
Receiving money and sending money.
Okay, funding a wallet, a funding account.
Yes, sir.
And which other one? How do they fund wallet? Do they fund wallet from your ATM card, or by transfer, or how?
They have that functionality of funding wallet via ATM and also
ATM
from
card
transfer.
from transfer. Okay, so you
Yes, sir.
mentioned two. What's the third functionality you know?
Think BVN verification.
BVM verification. So that's three. So now these three things you mentioned are just simply endpoints or APIs. That's what they are. The server is different. This is the server is running different. So these three functionalities you mentioned now are just APIs, which you are going to build. Now let me describe those APIs. Maybe you know what? Let me just build the APIs. I'm just going to build something. Now it's going to be a post request to create account, which is the first one you did, was to create account, and it's going to be /. They will either call it / create account. That's what they might call the endpoint, or / register, or maybe / sign up. They will just call it anything, but you know that is to create account. So the next thing they want to do is have a function here that will handle that request that creates accounts for users. So that is going to handle, take the request object and the response object. So if it does that, the next thing you want to do is ask what will the user be using to create the account. What will you be using or needing to create account for users? So for example, the users will send you their name, maybe first name and last name, however you want, their phone number. They'll send you their name, they send you their phone number, they'll send you their email if you're accepting email, they'll send you their address. What else do they want to send you? They send you their zip code, they send you their state, which is national state, they send you their nationality or country. These are the information you're going to accept from the user, or maybe from the form that is actually doing that. So the next thing you want to do is take this information that they have sent to you, verify them one by one. For example, you need to verify if the email is actually their own email. What you then do is send an email to this email and ask them to click on it. That is one. The second thing is to check whether the phone number is actually original Nigerian phone number. You have to run validation and check that. The next thing is maybe you want to test the zip code, or you leave it and not test the zip code. Then when you do all of that, you take this information and save it on the database. That is all. You have created an account for the user. you've created an account for the user. Now, when the user is coming back to log in, they will also send you to log in. They are going to be sending you maybe their email and password. That is, if you are using email and password, or maybe their phone number and password, anyone you are using. So you take their email and you take their password from the request body. Now, this is me taking the request or taking the body out of the request. Now, inside the body, you're going to be having these details that the user is sending. So I told you that the request is an object. Inside that object, you have so many parts of it. You have the body there. So it is in the body that the front-end developer will be attaching any information from a form. So any form that users are going to fill in the form, the details are going to be attached to the body of the request. We're going to talk about this. You're going to do it. You see how it works and all of that. I'm just explaining. So let's say the user is trying to log in, which is going to be /login. You take their email and you take their password. Now, what would this API do? The first thing this API is going to do is to run a check on the database. So it's going to run a check on the database and check whether this email that the user has sent to you, does it exist anywhere on the database? If it doesn't exist, it's going to return a message and say this user account does not exist. But if it exists, it will proceed to the next step. The next step is to check that account that has this email attached to it. Does the password match this password that has been sent here? If it doesn't match, it will send a message and says either email and password does not match, one of them. But if it matches, it's going to create a token and send it to the front end, telling the front end, we have authorized this user, we've authenticated this user, and we know that this person has entered the correct details. So therefore, give them access to see the dashboard or see any other information on the website or maybe on the mobile app. And that's it. That's what API does. So any app you know about, just mention it. All the functionalities they have are simply APIs, different APIs, different APIs. That is what they are. So all functionalities are just a group of APIs put together and being run by one server. That is what the backend is all about. And you're going to do it. We're going to do all of them. There is no need to rush. You're going to see it. I just hope this tonight. Okay. Everything you would see it and you would do it too. So do we have any other question? Sorry about the network. I don't think mine is actually crashing, but sorry. So what we're going to now do is move to GitHub. Okay, GitHub. Joshua. This is what I'm going to say. You know, when I usually teach, when I start teaching coding, some people will be waiting for when it will get difficult. So they believe that, okay, when it becomes difficult, we will start using it on project. If you are waiting for that time, it will never get difficult. It will just be small pieces that I will be putting together. And it will look as if it's very easy. You can actually remember it, looking at it, let that time reach. But what we are actually doing is the real job. So make sure you understand what we are doing right now. You are seeing it. You can do it because this is what it is real time. Now, we are done with the basics of backend, which is the JavaScript. We are done with the basics. What we are doing now is the real back end. And I told you, we just need 4 classes. The first 2 classes is the first week is gone. We just have 3 weeks to go, and you're done with the whole backend. So make sure that what we have done for this week, you understand it. And when that is done, we can move on to something else. Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right. It's just maybe 1 or 2 days we have done with authentication, and we have covered the whole authentication. And while we are covering authentication, before you know it, we've covered CRUD together. And I will tell you, it is time to start building your own project. So this is the real backend. It might look very simple, it might not look like what it is, but this is what it is. You know, some persons, there's an example I usually give to students about electricians. Now, if you hire an electrician and the electrician climbs your ceiling and then stays there for 4 hours and then comes down and tell your guy everything for that ceiling don't burn finish. I had to rearrange everything. I had to do coupling. I did this and did that. Will you doubt him? No, you will not doubt him because you're not there. Everything has crumbled upside down. You're not there. But if the electrician climbs your ceiling and in 5 minutes or maybe 2 seconds, maybe 1 minute, he has come down and tells you everything is in order, everything is in order, pay me 1 million naira. Will you pay him 1 million? You say, this thing will just do for 2 minutes, I'll be 1 minute. No, you want 1 million naira. But if the electrician decides to stay there for 4 hours, and you tell him, sorry, I'm going out, I have a meeting, I will come back by 5 p.m. Will you still be in the ceiling? He say, yes, okay, I'll still be in the ceiling. Go for your meeting and come back. Then you go for your meeting and you come back by 6 p.m. He's still in the ceiling. And then by the time you're coming back, he then decides to come down. I tell your guy, everything has crumbled. You know what? We are going to, you pay me 2.5 million naira. Tomorrow I will come back and then we'll continue the work. Are you going to doubt him? You're not doubting because you have absolutely no idea what is going on there. That is what the back end is. The back end is, if you don't know it, you don't know it. So people who have no idea about the back end will say, it's difficult to. It's difficult to. But it's when you're actually doing it, you'll be like, is this the real back end? Like, I want to talk about the real, there is nothing like that. If you're waiting for that time that, it's the real stuff, like the real back end, the people that are writing code that is running via. The day that this movie I love so much, what's the name? I can't remember the name. I went back, I think it was this year. Was it this year or last year? Somehow I came across that movie and I saw hackers, the computer hackers running stuff. When I looked at the screen, I just noticed that it was NPM that is running. I was like, oh my God. So all those things that the hackers is doing and the whole screen is going blue, green, still moving on its own. So that was NPM. They're just installing node packages. Oh my God. I almost cried. But at that time, I felt like, these guys are super hackers and so on and so forth. I didn't know they are just working with NPM. But that's what it is. That's what it is. What do you know, Sabi? You know, Sabi. All right, let's go to GitHub. Remember the movie. You can go and see that movie. They are running NPM. But if you don't know, you will not know. You will say this guy is a bad hacker. Say the screen is turning blue. If I increase this thing, I have done that before. You know what? I don't even need to increase it. I can just open it half, keep this one half, keep another half in the middle, keep another half at the end. 3 of them are running NPM from beginning to the end. I keep running node packages. And you say, oh my God, this guy is a hacker. He's a good hacker. Hacker for where? But I'm not saying the movie is not good though. I said when I watched it, it was interesting. But now I just see something different. All right. Now let's talk about pushing to GitHub. Yeah, backend is actually simple. Now, the backend is simple if you are using your brain because you will be doing a lot of thinking. You will be doing a lot of calculations. Like if you mention OP, for example, PKVS, for example, they do a lot of mind work. But the codes actually is where you show yourself. The thinking is where you show yourself, but the code is familiar, very simple. But is it the thinking? The algorithm, the step-by-step, what you should do before the other one, how you go about it. I want to take the user image, take their email, use that email to find a database if they exist. If it doesn't exist, I want to take their password, run it across all the password. So those algorithms, those step-by-steps, that is where you know that whether you're a good backend or you're not a good backend. But most times, people will just assume you're not doing anything, but they don't know that you are thinking. So I see a lot of developers that will just go and sit down on a small screen. They don't like big screens. They will stay with a small screen in a secluded somewhere under the tree, in a coffee shop or somewhere. Those are backend developers. You see people that carry big screens. they are front end and content writers. Those ones you see with just small laptop, one laptop, you don't see big screen, they are the real backend guys. Because what you are doing is brain work. You're not working with big systems. As a matter of fact, if you sit down one place as a backend developer, you sit down just one place for 1 week, your brain will become dull. You'll be needed to move around because you're doing heavy brain work. But we're going to see all of that later. Let's talk about GitHub. So whenever you want to push to GitHub, you already know the first thing you want to do is to create a repository. Now this repository must have a name. It must, I think I have backend intro. I think I did. It must have a name, okay? It must have a name. And of course, you know the difference between private and public. Now, if you keep it private, people will not be able to see it. I will not be able to see it if it's your assignment. Other developers will not be able to see it except you add them to that repo. But keep it public. All your repos should be public unless they are paying you for it. Unless they are paying you for it. So I will go ahead and click create repository. Now, whenever you are trying to push to Git, the first thing you want to do is that you've downloaded Git. Now, if you have not downloaded Git, then you cannot push with Git. You must download Git. When you download Git, it comes with Git bash automatically. When you download Git, it comes with Git bash. How does Git bash look like? Git bash looks like something like this. Something like this. So when you right click, you should see open with Git bash, and it looks colorful like this, something like this. So you download Git and you get Git bash. So when you download Git and you get Git bash, there are a few steps to take. Let me count them. The first step is Git init. The second step, before then, let me cancel this, Control C. Before then, you need to configure your Git, because Git needs to know who is actually using it. So you need to configure your Git username and your Git email. How do you do that? I think I'll share the link with you. Yeah, this is the first line you run without this $sign. No, you not run this $sign. This $sign is showing that it is on Mac. Yeah. So you run git config -- global user.name. Then you put your name inside here. So what does that mean? Now, if I want to ask my own Git config user.name, you see that it's showing that my name is David Sampson. So your Git needs to know who you are at every point in time. I cannot use my own Git and push to Joshua's GitHub. It will not work. I cannot use Karen's Git and push to Steven's GitHub. It will not work. So you will use your own Git to push to your own GitHub. And you can only do that when you have configured your Git. So you need to tell your Git what your name is and what your email is. So you run this line by line. You run this first one, you hit enter. You run this second one again, and you hit enter. Now I will not run it because I have already configured my Git. So you run the second Git config and you change this email. Now make sure that the email you are using here is actually the email you used in creating your GitHub account. That should be a very good point to note. The email you need to configure should be the email you used in creating your GitHub account. So when you've configured your Git, it's only once in the lifetime of that computer that you configure Git. So if you configure it once, you will not do it again until you stop using that particular computer and get another computer. So that's once. You only do it once for Git configuration. When you are done with that, then you are ready to start pushing to GitHub using Git. Now, it's very, very important to push with Git. You know what? Let me just copy the link and share it with you. The link, you can find this thing anywhere. It doesn't have to be, there are so many documentation that will show you how to configure Git email and username. So many accountable. All you need to do is just know what you're looking for. You're looking to configure Git and the name, and then Git and the email. That's all you're looking to configure. So there are so many places you find it, but this is the official documentation from Git. So that is why you see git.scm. This is the official documentation. That is why I got this one from the official Git documentation. But you can use any documentation anywhere. This is what you want to do. This one, like this. So when you want to deploy project, if you want to deploy your backend, deploy anything, you'll be using Git bash to deploy. Maybe to deploy to any server, you'll be using Git bash. Git bash. You cannot use CMD. CMD will not work. You cannot use PowerShell. PowerShell will not work. Only Git bash that can work, or you are using Mac. That's why I'm using Mac. You're using Mac, any of these Mac terminals. But for Windows, it's only Git bash that can work if you want to deploy your backend projects. Only Git bash. So another reason to download Git bash. So that's the second reason to download Git bash. So when you've downloaded Git bash and you've configured Git bash, there are a few steps, although the steps are outlined here, but I'm going to name them or number them one by one. Now, the most important steps you want to do is git init, which is this first one, git add dot, which is the second one, but it's not here, git commit, the third one, git, and then this fourth one, and the fifth one. So there are 5 most important steps to take when you want to push to Git. Now there's more than 5, but the most important, the compulsory ones, the ones you cannot avoid, are 5. If you are pushing for the first time, it is 5. If you are pushing for the second time to the same repository, it is now 3. So it reduces down to 3 steps, and I'm going to show you all of them one by one. So let's proceed. The first step, I'll close this, and I'll open terminal, go up. So I want to use this terminal now. The first step is to do git init. Now git init is more like what we call npm init. We are trying to initialize Git. Initializing Git means I have a project, but Git is not aware of what is going on in that project. But now I'm done with the project. I want to push it to GitHub. The only person that will push it to GitHub for me is Git. So I need to bring Git in and initialize it. That's the first definition. The second definition is this. My project is a different folder, but I want to create a Git folder because it is that Git folder that I will be pushing to GitHub. I will not be pushing my own project. Technically, it is not my folder that I'm actually pushing to what is it called? It's not my folder I'm actually pushing to GitHub. It is the Git folder that Git will carry and push to GitHub. So initializing Git simply means I want to create another folder for Git, a hidden folder for Git. So you do git init, enter. Now here it is saying initialize empty Git repository. So simply saying you have created an empty Git folder. That is what this initialized means. So the first time you've done it, or the first time you do it, the folder will be empty and you will see something like initialized. Now, if you do it again, now it says reinitialized. Now, this is where developers do get problems. The first time you do Git init, you can always push back to that company repo. If you do Git init again, what it means is the first Git history is lost. Whatever that first Git was doing, you've killed that one. You have brought in a new empty Git folder. So if you push that time, whatever you had before is lost. And most cases, GitHub will not even accept it. It will tell you some things are not the same. What you have on the remote repo and what you have in your system, they are not the same. So therefore, you can't push. Just a minute. All right. So that is why you do this first Git init once. If you still want to be pushing to that particular project every time and every time. But if it's a different project, you do Git init. So that's the first step, Git init. Now, if I then say something like Git status, to know the status of Git, this is what I have. It says untracked file. So this means that I have actually created an empty Git folder. Now, Git is aware of what is happening in this project, but it is not tracking the changes in these files. So Git has nothing to do with this file. It knows that these files exist. Now, if I open my folder, these are the files it's talking about. The first one is index.js, which is this. Second one is node modules, which is this. The third one is package lock, which is this. The fourth one is package.json, which is this. So Git is saying that these files exist, but they are not being tracked. So you need to add them or include them to my own folder so that I will start tracking them. That's what Git is saying. So the second step after Git init, the second step is the Git add. So Git add. So you then say Git add. Then you put the name of the file you want to add. For example, index.js. So I'm saying Git. I want you to take the index.js and add it to your own folder because I know your own folder is empty. So take Git, take this my index.js, duplicate it, and add to your own. Add one of it to your own. So if I hit enter and then run the Git status again, Git status. Now you see that it is tracking the index.js and is not tracking these three other files. It knows that these three files exist, but it's not tracking them. But this one is actually tracking this one, but this has not been committed. So that is what Git add does. Now I can add another one, which will be Git add package.json and hit enter. If I do Git status again, now you see it is tracking these three files, but it's not tracking these two files. Now, in some cases, you will not be adding this thing one by one, because you can have so many files. So you cannot be adding them one after another, which is why we do something like git add dot. Git add dot means git add everything in this folder, add it to your own folder. That is what it means. Pick everything that is in this folder, everything, add it to your own folder. That's what Git does. So, but But this is the thing. If I say add everything, it is going to also add node modules. But you know that we are not supposed to push node modules to GitHub. It is not allowed. Node modules sometimes can be so large. You don't need it. You can always generate the node modules files again and again. If you want to share codes with people, you will not be sending them the node modules because it can take a while to download. It can be so much, it can be so large to download. So you can't be sharing node modules. That is where the idea of git ignore comes in. .git ignore. .git ignore is a file that contains the names of files or folders or whatever it is that you want Git to ignore when it is adding to its folder. So for example, I can write in here node modules. Sorry, I want to be sure I'm getting the spelling. Node modules. So this means that if I'm saying git add everything, it is going to be ignoring node modules. So any file or any name I write inside the git ignore file, Git is going to ignore that file when it starts adding files to its own folder. So now I can run git add everything and hit enter. If I say git status again, you see it has added everything, but it is ignoring the node modules folder. That is what git ignore will do for you. So whenever you are pushing with Git, you must have a git ignore file. Git ignore file contains the names of elements or folders or files, anything you want Git to ignore when it is adding to its folder. That's what git init does. So the first step is to do git init. The second step is to do git add dot. That before you do git add dot, you must have a git ignore file. Otherwise, it will add everything, including the node modules, and it will be difficult to push to GitHub. So that's the first two steps. The second step is the commit. Git commit. Now, git commit means I know that you are tracking the changes in this file. Take a snapshot of the current changes and save all of them. Get ready to push. That's what git commit does. Git commit means take a snapshot of all the changes you are tracking, save it to your file, and then get ready to push it. So even though you make new changes, it has already taken a snapshot of the current state of file of each of those files. So if you add a new thing, those new things will not automatically appear in the snapshot. So whenever you do git commit, what you are simply doing is taking a snapshot of the current state, how those files look like at that moment. That's what git commit is. Take a snapshot of the current state of those files and get ready to push those changes that you've taken a snapshot of and push them to GitHub. So here is like a commit and a message. So I'll save it here. This message here called commit. Sorry, I don't know why it's not. I want it to. Now this commit here is a message. You can add your own message. Something like, let's say you are working with a group of developers and they ask you, please go and add, what would they ask you to add? Please create an endpoint or maybe create an API that does login. So when you write your codes and it's time to push to GitHub, you're going to add a commit message that describes exactly what you did, so that if there is any conflict, or maybe the code has crashed, the way Facebook crashed one time or Microsoft crashed one time, if anything goes wrong, they will go back to all the commit messages and see who did what. From there, they will know what exactly is wrong. So your commit messages should be able to describe what you did, which is why I would advise you, if they ask you to go and change the color of a button, this particular color from red to green, they show you that particular button. And then you overhear the client saying, I want you to change other buttons. Please don't go and change other buttons. Don't go and do other things. That particular one they say you should do only that one and come back. Don't do extra. As a matter of fact, don't just go and do. Let them write it down as in permission. Write it down. Hello, Cynthia. We are asking you to go on the platform, especially if it's backend though. If it's backend that has to do with database, there has to be a written note or email that says, please go to this place and change this thing from 1 to 2, or change this thing from this to this. So that when you do it and you are writing a commit message, you are pushing it to GitHub, you write a commit message that describes exactly what they said you should do. If there is any error, they come back to your commit message and read it, and they can finalize or maybe resolve that issue. But if you go and do extra, and that extra is not contained in your commit message, they will be searching for it for days and will not know where the error is coming from. Sorry, I've talked too much. I think I'm in a good mood today, and I don't even know why. All right. So your commit messages should be able to explain, I built an API that says hello. So that is what your commit message is. So that the front end or the lead developer will be able to know where errors are coming from at any point in time. So I'll hit enter. That's a commit message. If I run git status again, now you see nothing is appearing in green. It says you're nothing to commit. Your working tree is clean. So it means that it has taken a snapshot of the current state of each of those files and is ready to push it to GitHub. All right, the next step here, there is something called branch. These branches is more like versions of code base. Let's say all of us are working with one particular company and we have a project we are working on. As the lead developer, of course, I will be the lead developer. So as the lead developer, I will push that file to GitHub. Everybody will clone it. All of us, we are going to clone it. When we are cloning it, we are all cloning the master branch. I would then tell, is that Zion? Okay, I will tell Karim, please Karim, change this API to do this. I'll tell Michael, Cynthia, change this other API to do the other thing. I'll tell Saeed, this other API, I want it to do this thing. So I'll give the three of them 3 different tasks. But what they cloned was the master branch. When it is time for them to push back to that GitHub, they will not be pushing back to that master branch. Otherwise, the whole software will crash. So, as a developer that is working with other developers, when you clone a project, you are not pushing to the master branch. Rather, you will create your own branch. How do you create it? You write git branch, capital M, and then here you put the name of your branch. Most cases, you put your name as the name of the branch. Or if they give you a name to use, you put that name. That is what this branch is for. You create your own branch. When you are pushing, which is this last part is the push. When you are pushing, you will not be typing this main. Rather, you will be typing the branch that you are currently on. the name of the branch you are working on, not the master branch. But if you are working alone, of course, you use the master branch. But recently, GitHub doesn't like the idea of using the word master. So, which is why they are inventing main. So, they're encouraging you to use main. Now, when you are working on your project, the first time you're working on your project and you're pushing it, is actually a master branch. It's a master branch. If you push it like that, it's actually the master branch you are pushing, because you're working alone, is the master branch. So until you create a branch, it is still the master branch. But GitHub doesn't like the idea of us pushing to master. Some people say it's because they relate master to slavery. So they don't like to hear the word master. So they advise you change it to main. So the main branch and the master branch are one and the same thing. So whether you see main or you see master, you just know that it is the master branch. But you need to create your own branch. Now, in this case, I will skip creating branch. I will not create branch, so I will skip it. Rather, I will do this step because I know that I'm working on the master branch and I want to push the master branch. So there's no need creating a main branch. You can create it if you want, but I'm not creating a main branch. So here is the remote origin. This part is very important. Now, you have taken a snapshot that you want to push. Where do you want to push it to? What this means is you are taking this URL of your GitHub repo and you are telling Git to add it as your remote origin. So when I say push, this is exactly where you are pushing the files to. That is what this line is doing. So this line is you adding a URL as your remote origin, where Git will be pushing it to. So there's going to be a lot of repositories, but this particular URL is pointing to a particular repository that Git will be pushing to. I want to believe you're writing all of this down, if possible, but if not, that's fine. So I will copy this and run it. What it's doing is actually linking the URL where Git will push to. So I have linked it. Now you see there is no error. I have linked it. Some developers do get issues on this part. If I try to link it again, it says remote origin already exists. That's because I've linked it before. Now, in this case, I'm the one that linked it. So I know that I linked it. But what if I'm not the one that linked it? Or maybe I clone it from somewhere and I'm trying to push back and it says remote already exists. And I don't even know where it's going to. I don't know the remote where it's going to. So this is where most developers have issues. So the first time this word here will be add, because that is the first time. The second time you are not adding, you are setting. So you write set URL. So instead of add, I will take it up. So instead of add, I will change that add to become set URL. Like this. So this means I am not adding URL. I've already added it, or someone has already added it. But this time I am saying set the URL or set the origin URL to be this. So whatever the URL was before, ignore it. Now set it to be this one. So if I hit enter, you see there is no error again. But if I try to add again, it says remote already exists. But if I hit, if I do set URL, it set the URL. So you might have these issues where the file or whatever you are trying to push already has a remote origin like that. That's the fourth step. Now the final step is this git push. This git push is just saying whatever repo that I have added as the URL, please push this file to that place. And this main here is the name of the branch you want to push. So if you created a branch, you put the name of that branch here. If you did not create a branch, it means that it is the master branch. But if you created a branch, you put the name of that branch. If you did not create a branch, you put the master branch. So I will copy this and I will paste it. Now, if I try to push main, I'm going to get errors because I didn't create a main branch. If I try to push another branch like my name, David, I'll get error because I did not create any branch. So if you did not create any branch, it means that you are working on the master branch. Hit enter. And you have pushed it. So if I come here and refresh, you see that the file should appear here. And the commit message says, I built an API that says hello. Commit messages are very, very important. Very, very, especially this period. They're very, very important. Now, this is when you are going the first time. So the first time you are actually pushing, like I said, there are 5 steps. The first step is to run git init. That's the first step, git init. Now, when you run git init, the second thing to do is to say git add dot. That is the second step, git add dot. The third step is to say git commit. Where is it? The third step, the third step is here to say git commit, and you add a commit message. That is the third step. Now, if you want to create a branch, that is fine. But if you are not creating a branch, the fourth step is to add a remote origin URL. The URL that points to that repo. That is the fourth step. A URL that points to that repo. Now, the last step, which is the fifth step, is where you then say git push. You need to indicate the branch you are pushing. If you created a branch, then you put the name of that branch. If you did not create a branch, then you know that it is the master branch. So that is 5 steps on how to push to Git. It is very, very important you know how to push to Git. Now, let's assume you've pushed to Git the first time. Let's assume you pushed to Git the first time. And you've come here, you've seen it, you open your file, you see that it ended here. But you're still working on the project. You've come back to your file and you added new changes. For example, you duplicated this one and save it. You will notice that these changes that you just did now, the color of the file has changed actually. But that changes are not appearing automatically on GitHub. How do you push those changes again? Now, this is where I said the first time it is 5 steps. The second time it is 3 steps. So the second time you need to open your terminal again. You will not do git init again because git init is more like creating an empty Git folder. So once you do git init, Git will forget about whatever you have done before. All the histories, all the commit messages, everything you have done before, Git will forget it and start from the beginning. And you don't want that. So you skip that. What you do is say git add dot. Whatever changes I have made, add all of them to that your Git folder. That's what git add dot means. Because you already know that you've done git init before. You've pushed this file before. You are pushing the second time. So whatever changes I've made, just add to it. You say git add dot. When you say git add-on, the next thing is the commit. Git commit -m and then a commit message. I duplicated. Now you don't have to cram it. The first time I was working with Git, what I did was to create an empty repo, keep it as private, so that nobody will know that that repo is empty. Anytime I want to push, I will go and be copying those steps there and be using it. That's what I did then. But I kept that repo as private. But if you are smart and you can actually remember all those things, it's also fine. You go ahead. But these are like the first step. If I hit enter, it has committed. Now, the third step, which is the last step, you're not adding a remote origin again. Because, if you try to add it, it will tell you that a remote origin already exists. So you are not adding. Rather, you say git push origin -u, and then you put the name of the branch. Now, my branch is the master branch. But if you created a branch, you put the name of the branch, and then you hit enter. So these are the 3 steps when you are now pushing the second time. Now, if this file, if I refresh now, I should see those new changes attached to this file. Why is it not refreshing? Okay. Now, the new changes are here. This is how, or this is what happens when you are using a website. The website is working. Before you know, overnight, you'll see new changes. That is what we call continuous development or continuous integration, continuous development. So as they are making changes, they are pushing the changes. As they are making changes, they are pushing the changes. The users are just waking up to see new updates, There is no time where they will take down the software. They're just adding and adding and adding and adding and adding. So ladies and gentlemen, that is how to push to GitHub. The first time I tried pushing to GitHub, most of these things I wrote it down on paper. And even though I wrote it down on paper, I was still making mistakes. I still did not understand it. But it'll be nice to see that you actually understand it, and it's fine. But if you have any question, please go ahead and ask your question. Karim, let me start calling people who are on this call. If you understand it, drop a thumbs up. If you don't understand it and you have a question, please go ahead and ask your question. Wisdom, do you want to say something? Wisdom, Bisola, Juliana, Nathaniel. Okay. Crossrep, go ahead. Should I give you the mic? Where is it? Go ahead, use the mic, and then say what you want to say. All right, go ahead. Yes, Crossrep, we are waiting for you. 18 participants. Where are the rest? We're about 9. Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody. Okay, sir. So my question is this: considering all the work that has going to starting, developing, and maintaining software, not necessarily backend, how do you know what to charge if you're a freelance developer, or you're starting out and you get a job to do a freelance work? How do you know what to charge? That's my question, sir. Thank you.
Okay, when it comes to charging, now it depends on who you are and what you are. There are people who can work on a project and everything will go perfectly, and they know it. They can wake up one morning and tell you building a website is 3.5 million. 3.5 million is actually small. Actually, it's 10 million naira. It will go well. It will still fly. The second thing is it depends on the client. There's some client that will approach you. You don't need to be told. You know that if you charge this person 10 million naira, he's going to the next. He's just walking out of your office. You tell him something. Actually, you don't even tell. Now, I'm just telling you, this advice now is like what I used to do then. But now, you don't just tell them any price, though. What I do is I want to hear from them. Tell me all the functionalities that needs to be built, everything that we are building. Describe the application. Tell me every single details. If possible, write it down on a piece of paper. Whether it's a rough note, whether you want to type it, just write something down. The things you want to do. Even if you are writing it in broken English or good English, it doesn't really matter. Whether you're using diagram, it doesn't matter. Just write down the functionalities. When you write down the functionalities, the second thing is tell me what is your timeline? How long do you want, or when do you want this project done? How long should it take? Start and finish. When should I start it? When should I finish it? Sometimes they'll tell you 1 month. They'll tell you 2 months, 3 months. Some say they don't really know. You should be the one to tell them how long it will finish. The third thing you ask them, what is your budget? You want to know exactly how much they can afford. Sometimes they will tell you they don't know. They want to just hear from you what your own budget will be, and so on and so forth. Now, it is depending on you. You will look at the functionalities they told you. Now, if they have not told you the functionalities, please don't charge them any money, because you might end up in police cell the second day, and I'm not coming to bail anybody. Even if you call your brothers, I'll tell your brothers not to come out. You need to ask them questions before you start saying anything about money. So you look at the functionalities, all of them. You look at all the functionalities. Ask yourself, these functionalities, how many days will they take me to complete one by one? Now, you can decide to say, you know what? I can say my time every day, 5 hours every day. If I'm giving this project 5 hours every day, I want to be getting 3,000 naira per day. I want to be getting 10,000 naira per day. I want to be getting 20,000 naira per day. It's entirely up to you. So you can charge whatever makes you happy. The reason is this: when you are building a backend project, you will think a lot. Sometimes you will do something and it's not working. Now, there are people I work with, a lot of people I work with, they know something about me. They know that when you want me to work very well, you need to give me motivation. Motivation is simply money. You need to give me money. So if you want me to actually think and think and think and think very well, there has to be motivation. If you don't bring motivation, it will not work. So when you're working on a project, you ask yourself, if I run into a bug or a challenge that will take me 3 days and it's still not working, will I get offended and just throw the whole laptop away? Will I get offended and just carry the whole laptop, fling and throw away because I don't tire? But sometimes you can encounter error and you remember how much you are being paid for that project. You'll be like, okay, you know what? Let me still endure. I'll find the changes. So if they pay you 100K and you feel like 100K is a good money, I'll still endure. If they pay you 300, 350, 650, 1 million, you can still endure. So building a backend project doesn't really have exact amount. It can range from 100,000 to 6 million naira, depending on the functionalities that will be on that website. Somebody who is going to be building OPay and somebody is going to be building Access Bank are not charging the same money. Somebody who is building Konga and building Uniport website are not going to be charging the same money. Depends on the functionality on that website. Some projects are going to take you 1 week. Some will take you 1 month. Some will take you 3 months. Some will take you 4 months. Some will take you 1 year to finish it. So imagine if you have to drop everything you're working on and you're working on a project for 3 months, the whole of 3 months, how much will you charge for that project? So these are things you consider before you start charging. I have a friend. He works on a project once in a year. So he doesn't work on more than 1 project a year. So guess how much he'll be charging if he's going to work on 1 project per year. There are people who work on 2 projects per year. They pick up 2 projects. I will start working on this one for the first 6 months. I work on this one for the second 6 months. There are people who work on 3 projects. There are people who work on 4 projects. Now, it depends on how long it will take you to complete the functionalities on that website. So, that being said, while you are charging, charge something that will make you happy when you are frustrated, when you are tired, when you are discouraged. You feel like, you know what, let me still continue, because it will always happen. It will come to that point where you have no idea what to do. You don't even know. There was a project I was working on. I got stuck. I was asking senior colleagues questions. I was asking people questions. Nobody was ready to answer me. Nobody was even ready to give me anything. I met somebody on LinkedIn and he said, nobody will show you a response, because the moment they tell you, they've actually given you the secret to how their own backend was built. The person that helped me was a hacker from Vietnam. I didn't even know the guy. He just met me on Twitter. I said, okay, you know what? Show me what you've done. Let me see this. And he said he's only helping me because there is another hacker in Nigeria that he likes. So that is the only reason why he's helping me. So from Vietnam, he's helping me because there's a hacker in Nigeria that he likes. I don't know if the 2 of them are friends. I don't even know the hacker, but just on Twitter. And that was how I came out of that bug. And since then, I don't think I've encountered any challenge that I've not been able to resolve. But there are issues that might take me 2 days to resolve, 3 days, even 1 week to resolve. But that one took me time. And the reason why I was looking for help from everywhere was because if not be God, I was going to end up in police prison, because I've used the money for that project to buy a new laptop. So even if they ask me to refund money, there is no way I'm going to refund that money. So see prison. So I need to ask questions. I was going to ask questions, and I was happy somebody was able to help me. So within the range of 100,000 to 6 million naira, depending on the functionalities you are going to build. And when you are charge something that will make you happy, that will still keep you motivated, because some project can take you 3 months. You'll be working every day, morning and night. There are sometimes, a lot of persons know my timeline. I don't even sleep in the night. 12 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I'm still awake. Sometimes it's 4 a.m. that I will sleep. I'll sleep by 4 a.m. Before it gets to 8 a.m., you start getting a call. Come and join meeting. So if you're not paying me well, and I'm losing my night sleep, and I'm not waking up very early, to join meeting, will I be happy? No, I will not be happy. But if you look at the motivation, you'll be like, know what? To be like this, we'll go see the door and let's continue. Now, small, continue. So some people think like tech job is where you have money. Yes, you have money, but you have problems there. There are so many problems. There's a lot of risk involved. I've met a South African client that was ready to bring in 3 million on the spot to give to me and my guy to build a project. My guy said, guy, no collect. Before you go to FBI, I go from South Africa, call you, I can't find you. So you have to be like up and doing. The moment they pay you that money, my brother, there's no more sleep for you again. No. All they know is that their software should come out and be working perfectly. And you know what it will take from you now. So whatever it makes you happy, that's what you should charge, and then keep it safe. Now, if they say they are not going to accept that file, you can still negotiate. That's why you always ask them, what is your budget? You need to first find out what their budget is. Now, if their budget is not enough, you give them reasons. You tell them, this project is going to take me 3 minutes to complete. Each functionality is going to take me one day. See how I'm going to move. That you give them reasons, practical reasons why you are charging that amount. So for tech job, you don't just wake up and say, I'm charging 3 million and that is all. No. You give them reasons. You tell them why. You tell them the cost of development, how it costs, what you're going to run, cost for power, data. And it needs the backend. Backend, you spend a lot of data to work and do research and all of that. You'll be up all night working. So that's how we charge. And that's what you should also charge. So, but there's no fixed price. There's no fixed price. A project that I would do for 100K, somebody can do it for 250. A project that I would do for 250, somebody can do it for 50,000. Now it depends on. Now there are people who are already working on big projects that's paying them very well. a very big project, but they will then see another project that they have not worked on before. Maybe they have worked on an e-commerce website. Then they see a real estate mobile app, but the mobile app is not paying well. It's not paying well. The person is ready to offer 150, whereas you are going to actually charge 300, but the person is offering you 150. You would then be like, you know what? For the fact that I have not worked on a real estate project before, let me use this your project as an experience. So I will collect that 150, not because that is what I want to charge actually, but I want to gain that experience so that next time somebody will come and ask me, can you build a real estate project? I will say, yes, I have done it before and I can do it again. So that's why most times charges can differ. They will not be the same. There are people who are already working on a project that is paying them 1 million naira. I know a guy in this Port Harcourt, he's earning $4,000. Like $4,000. You know how much that is. Now, that kind of a person may not have time to work on a project. But if you bring a project and he knows the importance of that project, he can decide to work on that project free of charge because, of course, he's earning money somewhere. So he can decide to work on that project for free of charge just because he knows the importance of that project. So what you charge depends totally and absolutely on you, but don't charge something that would push your client away, especially now that you're just starting out. So don't put your, well, they say cut your coat according to your size or cut your size according to your coat, anyone. So any other question before we call it a day? Any other question? Yeah, from the backend prison. Any other question before we call it a day? You can't hear me. Are you serious? Wisdom, where is your question? Yes, combining branches. It is actually called merging, but it is not your job to merge a branch. It is actually the lead developer's job to merge a branch or merge more than one branches because there might appear conflicts. There might be conflicts. So it is before you merge, you need to make sure that there is no conflict. You resolve all the codes that are conflicting with one another. So that's what we do. You merge it. But if there is time, I'm going to show you how to merge branches, but that is not your job. That's the job of a lead developer. As you keep going, if you grow to become a lead developer, then you will know you need to learn how to merge more than one branches. Okay. The add is when you are setting that URL for the first time. That's when you use add. Now, if that Git has already been, if a URL has already been added and you want to add a new URL, you use set URL. So set URL is used for when there exists or there is an existing URL. You want to, will I say, you want to, what's that word I want to use now? You want to set a new URL, then you use set URL. But if it's the first time, you use add because you're just adding to an empty stuff. There is no URL there. But if there's a URL there, you use set URL. Wisdom, where are you? Please go ahead. You can unmute yourself and use the mic. Wisdom.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, I think I've answered this one.
Yeah, when you were talking, you talk on when we make life changes via the website, when you push the codes and you make your changes that it will be updated via the website. So
yes.
My question is, the hosting, is it not a different company that hosts? So how will that changes made on GitHub reflect on the hosting account?
Now, that is where the idea of continuous integration, continuous development comes in. When you are hosting, it depends on how you want to host. majority of times, we host from our GitHub. So what we do is that we push the code to our GitHub, and then we go to the cloud storage where we want to use as our hosting and point them to our GitHub repo and give them access to that GitHub repo and tell them that this is the repo I will be updating. Anytime you notice that this repo has been updated, then pick the latest update and deploy again. So that is how we do it. Most times, we don't push the code to them. We push the code to GitHub and then point them to that repo and give them access to that repo and tell them that this is the repo that I am going to be updating. That's the one way. Another way is you push the code directly to them. When you want to update, you push the second code again directly to them. But it's just basically the same thing. So why I like using GitHub is I don't want to push the code to them and then come back again, push it to my GitHub, because I must save that code. How do I save it? I will push it to GitHub. If I push it to them, they are not going to send me back the code I pushed to them. So if you push to them, you must push to GitHub. So most times we just say, you know what? No need pushing to you again. I just point you to my GitHub repo and you take it from there. That's one way.
Okay, sir. What if you are not using a cloud storage? You are using other hosting servers. You are not using a cloud storage.
For backend, it must be a cloud storage. For backend, it must be a backend cloud storage. But if it is a front end, it depends on what you are building. Now, if you are building with HTML, then you have to just zip the HTML and send it to them. If you are building with React or Vue or Angular, you need to build it, like run build, and then zip the build folder and send it to them. So that's different. You're not, but sometimes also you can also use GitHub to deploy your front end. You push the front end and then you point them to that repo. But that's a different story. We're going to learn how to push and deploy. Now, Stephen, it depends on the project you are working on. Now, I learned that Access Bank is going to give jobs to those who are going to perform well in these Youth Thrive and these Youth Thrive programs. So, if you get a job somewhere like Access Bank or any bank, they will be paying you continuously, every month. You'll be working on the project every month. Maybe you get in a job in another company, they'll be paying you. But if you are working as a freelancer, is different. You are paid on the project for the time being. So they will pay you, or you have to come to an agreement to tell them, this is the total amount you will pay me for the entire project, but you should pay me in milestones. Maybe you will pay me for the first milestone, which is 1 month, you pay me so and so amount. For the second milestone, you pay me so and so amount. When we are done with the project, if you still want me to be maintaining the project, then this is the amount you'll be paying me on monthly basis or on weekly basis, and so on and so forth. So any other question before we call it a day? Stephen, I want to believe I answered the first question about set URL and add URL. So any other question? Now, being job ready depends entirely on you. Being job ready depends entirely on you. That is why I said, if you say you can, not me that said it, it's not me. Who said that? I think it's can't remember this philosopher's name. When you say you can, then you can. If you say you can't, then you can't. Now, 3 months is enough time for me to teach you everything you need to know. If you know it and a job comes immediately and you believe you can handle it, then you can handle it. Now, a lot of us we are not 100% perfect by the time we got our first jobs. No, there is something called learning on the job. So you know what should be done. You know how it should be done, but you've never done it before. How will you know you can do it until they give you the job? That is the only time you will know that you can actually do it. So my question then is this. There are a lot of students that when they get a job, they become confused most times. They will call back the teacher, sir, I want this. Can you help me? Can you assist me? Can you tell me this? Can you show me this? And all of that. In those cases, for students who are active in the class, people I know very well that are doing my assignment, doing stuff, I know that they are learning. When they come with a job and they are confused, I can actually come in. But if it's somebody that I know that you've not been attending class, you're not active in class, and you've gotten a job, and you call me, one thing is sure, you are going to leave the project for me to complete it, and I will not come in. But if it's somebody that I know that I can just show you something or point you to a documentation or something, and you take it up from there, then I can come in and show you that thing, or maybe point you to that direction, and you take it up from there. So being job ready depends entirely on you. I have a friend. He learned backend. He didn't actually learn backend. He went out, got a client that wants to build an e-commerce website, not like an e-commerce, a booking website. And he took the job, took the offer. Although, because it's his first time, he didn't charge very well. He took the job, took the offer, and he started coding it. He was coding it like that. Now, not like he started coding. He was learning and coding. So he will go and learn one and come and code that one in the project. How do you build authentication API? You learn it and then build authentication API. How do you set up the server? You learn it and come back and set up the server. I had a student, not one, not two. I had so many students that in that cases. I had one student that charged 15,000 naira. 15,000 naira. Not this year, not last year. 15,000 naira to build a project. He has been building the project, and then he came to me. I told him, you know what? Package the project like that. That phase, send it to the client. Tell him you are done. Tell him you are done. He said, what? I said, package it like that. Send it to him that you are done. That you can't complete it for that amount. That you are sorry, you charged in low, but right now you've seen that the functionalities are more than what is expected. So he packaged it like that and sent it to the client. The client said, the client vexed, I'm going to call on that person, I'm going to move here. I said, relax. If he wants to move to somebody else, he should move to somebody else. Let's see who's going to do it for 15,000 naira. I don't know whether he found somebody else, but he then called the student back and said, how much will you take to complete the entire project? I told him you're going to take 250,000. He collected 250,000 naira. I don't know they didn't pay 250. I think he was paying 150. He paid 150 first. And then he came back. I started showing him where to start, what to do. And I told him, you pay for my transportation, you pay for my lunch, you pay for everything. If I'm coming down there, he said, no problem. He paid, and I went down there, started working on the project. And halfway of the project, he then said it's okay, that he can complete the project now. That was how we left the project, and he completed the project. Now, for such a person, I know that I'm not going to complete the project for him. I'm just going to show him one or two things he doesn't know, and he will take it off from there. Otherwise, police will arrest both me and them together, and I don't want to put my leg or my hand there. So that is what I do. So if you will be needing help after 3 months, you need to be very active. If you are very active, in 3 months, you'll be job ready. You may not be perfectly job ready, but you should be able to handle internship roles, handle junior developer roles. Just small roles, you can handle them. My brother, me and police no good though. Now, police is actually my friend. Funny enough, because of my dad, I go from one police office to another because he has so many friends and some issues that he tracks to handle, some court cases. I move from one police station to another, IG monitoring things, soldiers, and so on and so forth. I know them very well, but at the same time, I don't want to have any case or anything to do with them. And I've never had any issues with them too. So I try to avoid anything that will bring me close to that side. Yeah. So any other question before we end today's class? Is that okay? Any other question? Any other question? Karim, for now, you can't work on a project that involves backend. Now that we're not done, no. Until we are done, you are going to build your own backend from start to finish. Send it to me and I will assess it. And then you are going to join the incubation program for 1 month and then you finish it. When you are done, then you can handle a project. Yes, we are going to learn database. And our next class should be involving how to add a database to the back end. Now, Stephen, it depends. If it is a mobile app, you are not working on the mobile app. You are only working on the back end of the mobile app. So the user does not need to update their mobile app, except you build an API that does not exist on the front end of that mobile app, and the front end developer updates the mobile app. Then the user will need to update their mobile app. When you want to buy specification laptop for programming, it depends on what you want to program. If it is backend project, 8 gig RAM is enough. Any laptop at all, any laptop that has 8 gig RAM and a speed of 2.0 is enough. For a start is enough. But if you are going to be building mobile app or building front end, you need something like 16 gig or so. But for back end, you don't need much. System specification doesn't really matter. 8 gig RAM of a speed of 2.0 of any laptop will work. The incubation program is a program where after you're done with your personal project, we're going to merge you together as your back end now. We're going to bring a front end developer. We're going to bring UI designers and put all of you in one team. So you're going to work in different teams building a software. You will be responsible for the back end. The person for front end will be responsible for front end. Together, the person from design will be responsible for the design of the software, and all of you will put it together. The product manager, all of you put it together, have your meetings, do everything, and make sure you come up with a project and present it. So when you do that one, that is the incubation program. But it's only for those who will be selected. So you need to be a good student and you need to be very active to be selected for the incubation program. All right, I think there is no more question. If you're okay to end the class here, you can drop a thumbs up so that we can end the class. You can drop a thumbs up so that we end the class. Thank you very much. See you again on Saturday. Expect the assignment tomorrow. Expect the videos tomorrow. And bye. Good night.